Hello and welcome to another edition of the Father and Son Pastime Podcast. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kevin.
That's my dad. Today we continue with our best all-time dream teams of each MLB franchise. Today's feature is the Colorado Rockies. The Colorado Rockies' newest team in baseball in terms of the expansion in '93 that saw the Rockies and the Marlins, now the Miami Marlins, join MLB. So we don't have that many years to really talk about, but I still think there's a lot of good 1-2 punches in a lot of positions throughout it. So it'd be fun to debate with my dad to see what we end up with.
A lot of offensive players that have gone through Colorado and great stats. Ball flies out of the Rockies Stadium and everything else. We've been to that stadium.
Coors Field's great,
and it's a fun place to go. You can see why the ball travels so far. But again, if you've never been to Denver, make sure you go out there and see a Rockies game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it's a great sports town all around too.
Yes.
If you're just joining us, what we do in these podcasts, we talk about each position, the best player at each position, and there's certain requirements to earn that right. You've had to have at least 3 years of service time to that club, so in this case the Rockies, and really specifically that position. So you can't just say like, oh, I got trouble coming up with 3 great outfielders. Well, let me put Carlos Gonzalez at second base or something like that. That doesn't work. So they have had to be known for playing that position. You can't just choose like the best 9 or best 8 offensive players. So we normally get started. We kind of ping pong back and forth. So we start with catcher, and we work our way all the way up through pitching, as well as our favorite or the best manager, and then for the fun of it, 2 logos. There's only been 2 in Rocky history, so we'll get to that at the end. Dad, who do you have for the best Rockies catcher?
The original catcher, Joe Girardi.
I figured you would go with Joe.
Yes.
I think Joe is definitely on the 1, 2, 3 of mine. I don't know if he's second or third, but I went with Wilin Rosario. You tell me why you went with Joe.
Defense, leadership. And again, I kind of looked at who they drafted to build this team, and they've had a lot of great players since that. But you go back to the 20 players that were drafted, the Cubs hated to get rid of lose Joe Girardi, and he went there and he became a great catcher. Not I think he made 1 All-Star game. But again, just a great, solid catcher that became a manager through his knowledge and everything else. So I thought that was apropos.
Yeah. I went with Rosario for the main reason that he was very great offensively in his, 5-6 years with the Rockies. But for the most games, I believe, caught in terms of per season as a catcher. When you look at Arenado, you look at Girardi, and I think due to the Rocky Mountain air, I'm serious. A lot of these catchers, either can't catch a full game or they can only go so many games in a season. Like you look at Arenado, who averages 110. So Rosario did upwards of the 140s, and I believe he averaged in somewhere around the 130s. So I thought, if I want someone to be my starting catcher, I want someone with the best endurance, and I went with Rosario.
Never thought of that. Mm-hmm. That's a great thought.
Yeah,
very good.
Rosario just seems, and he was younger when he was with the Rockies versus a lot of these other catchers too. So I'm sure that had something to do with it as well.
Very good.
For Helton, it's going to be the only retired number so far in Colorado history, but Todd Helton. I think it's a simple choice. Did you have Todd as well? I'm assuming you did.
I did. I had Andre Galarrago as the number 2.
Yep.
He had great years in Colorado. You can only imagine when he got hold of a baseball how far that went. But both are great. First baseman. Todd defensively was better.
Gold gloves.
Yep. Also, he was a college football player. But again, Todd, I think, is probably top 5 of the most renowned Rocky players of all time.
Definitely. I would say that. Currently he might be number 1. Maybe eventually, Larry Walker gets his number retired. I'm sure Arenado is going to get his number retired eventually too. Does Helton make Baseball's Hall of Fame? I can give you some stats: 2,500 plus hits, 3 Gold Gloves, lifetime average 316.
I think he's going to come up short in the home run department, and I think he won't, but he'll always be on the list for all those years. He won't get to 75%.
Like a Hall of Very Good.
Yeah.
No, I always makes him laugh, but that's a real thing. I think when we talk,
which is not in Cooperstown, by the way.
No, it's I don't
Albany.
Know.
It's in Albany.
It's in Paris, Tennessee, or some town like that. All right, so Todd Helton for sure is definitely starting first baseman. Galarraga bench. Second baseman. Who do you have for second?
DJ LeMahieu.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the most underrated players, not just second baseman, on all of baseball right now. He had 348 one season, and he had 3 Gold Gloves, and he really is just unfortunate because he played in Colorado. Much like Story or Arenado, you're not getting the media attention that I think he deserves. But now he's in New York. He might. DJ's had one heck of a career.
Yes.
And I mean, again, he's going to end up with a 300 plus lifetime average too. So. Very talented second baseman.
Yeah, another bad trade from the Cubs.
Yeah.
But he was a player that didn't think they were going to hit for average, and so in Wrigley Field they wanted someone to hit more for power and all that stuff. They gave up on DJ without really giving him a chance. Went to Colorado and just was a doubles machine.
Yeah.
And line drive hitter and all that stuff.
Phenomenal.
And a great range for a second baseman. He's like 6'4", 6'5". He's a big second baseman. So, again...
He's been used at first base a few times, I believe.
Right. But I just think in Colorado, he really made a name for himself. But, yeah, he's one of those underrated stars that I think he made a great point. But, yeah, he's up there. I think he's a great, great second baseman.
Yep. So, a lot of these, because it's such a recent franchise, you will see a lot of names you obviously recognize, names that are still playing.
Mm-hmm.
But a name for me at shortstop that's not still playing, Trevor Story, I think you're great. Mm-hmm. But you're my backup here. Troy Tulowitzki, by far the best Rockies shortstop.
Again, you're right on the money. Story will have a great career. Hopefully he stays a Rocky and all that stuff. But Tulowitzki was the man in Colorado for the longest time. And a great athlete. Another big shortstop, by the way.
I think he's 6'5".
Right.
Yeah.
And just, did a great job. Great range. The Cal Ripken of the National League, if you want to put it in a comparison.
I think, from what I've seen in my lifetime, Jeter was the best shortstop of the 90s, but Troy Tulowitzki was the best shortstop of the 2000s.
Yeah, and and always every offensive category he shined. Always 25, 30 home runs. 100 RBIs. I think about a cleanup for the most part during the main lineups.
3, 4.
Yeah, so I mean, when you have a shortstop can do all that, you got a very valuable player.
Yeah. Third baseman's the easy choice. It's the shirt I'm wearing. Nolan Arenado. In my opinion, he will be the best Rocky ever. In the middle of his career right now, he likes playing in Colorado. I know there's been some issues with managerial stuff, but he likes the physical park. He likes the stadium. Plus, he's never not won a Gold Glove. That's very impressive. Every single season he's played, he's been the best third baseman defensively in the National League.
Quiet superstar.
Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, ball just jumps off his bat. He's just a great, great third baseman. And I think we were watching a game at Nationals Park, and I think he had 2 or 3 home runs that day, and they're just rocking him.
He's an intense player.
Yeah. Just to piggyback, there was a guy named Vinny Castillo.
Yep. I remember Vinny.
Yeah.
All these players I remember.
Yeah.
I'm older than this team, Dad. So, I remember all these players.
Yeah. And Vinny's had the mullet, which wasn't a good look.
Yeah, it was the 90s.
That's right.
A lot of mistakes were made.
That's right. But Vinny really was a great offensive third baseman as well. Always, 30 home runs and all that stuff, many All-Star games. But, with you take away Nolan, then Vinny would be the one.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, during, the Don Baylor years and everything else, and he was one of the stars of, the Blake Street Bombers, I think they used to call them back in the day.
Yeah.
And a lot of home runs. But Vinny was number 2.
Okay. Now we get to the outfield, where I think there'll be some debate between the two of us, as well as you at home, on who plays what position. Obviously, you're going to have Larry Walker being the centerpiece of this outfield, but we'll get to him in a second. So left field for me is Matt Holliday. Yours, Dad?
I had Matt Holliday with Cargo behind him.
Yeah, Cargo will be my 4th outfielder here. I know that's a hell of a statement. But Carlos Gonzalez also can be really any of those spots in the outfield. Yeah. But I got Matt. He had better years, great average, really hit the ball well, and in my opinion, one of the best left fielders in the past 20 years.
Yeah, big man.
Yeah,
his arms are massive.
Yeah, he could hit.
Yeah.
For average and for power. I mean, he was a pretty great offensive threat in any lineup. Rockies or Cardinals. But yeah. So I have Matt Holliday. So cool. We lined up there. Center field. Who do you have for center field?
Dexter Fowler. As we go, you go. No, as you go, we go. That's what Joe Madden used to say. But just a great, again, one of those Rockies that came up and stayed with them for 6, 7 years, but just covered so much ground in that massive Rocky outfield. I really enjoyed playing, to seeing him play, and just when he batted leadoff, he has style about him. He was one of the high energy guys, kind of Ken Griffey Jr. of Colorado.
Oh, hell of a comparison. There's also a little sentimental thing. Dexter Fowler is one of my favorite players. I really latched onto him, and I think he's always been used wrong. He is a leadoff hitter that should slap hit and bunt. Think of an Ichiro without power, in my opinion. But when you try to make him a home run hitter and you try to tell him to swing for the fences, his average goes down. So people told him to bulk up, bad idea, be the 175 pounder you were in college and just bunt and slap and run.
He used to glide in the outfield.
Yeah, I mean, he was fast. I mean, stolen bases galore. He's on my 25-man roster, the best Rockies of all time, but you got to give it to Charlie Blackmon. Just the average alone. I know I lack a lot of speed on this team, but maybe in the best years of Blackmon to make up for
That's
that.
That's why I got to put
bit.
Dexter in there.
I know. Dexter's my little stolen base in the 8th or the 9th. My Terrence score. But no, I think just Blackmon is, another person who's played, corners at multiple positions, but I think he's found a home in center field. Biggest beard on this team for sure.
Yeah.
But Charlie Blackmon is my center fielder.
Great. I've seen him be interviewed by ESPN and others. Very good interview. Has a sense of humor.
He loves getting mic'd up in during games, and he'll interview during the All-Star games.
Wears the high socks.
He enjoys having fun with baseball, and you can clearly tell that. Larry Walker, I think, will be both our right fielders here.
Yeah.
To me, it's a shame Larry Walker's not in the Hall of Fame. I think he should be. He's the only Rockies MVP, 7-time Gold Glover, and he's a 3-time winner of the batting title, all for his years in Colorado.
I agree. Just a fantastic player. Really, I mean, think about the heart and soul of a team. He was it.
Yeah. What didn't he do,
Correct.
Power, average, defense,
They used to pitch around him most of they could, but Colorado had such a great lineup that if you pitched around Larry Walker, there was someone behind him that do some damage. But
Todd Helton.
Right. Yeah. Back in the day, the Rockies used to score 8 to 12 runs a game.
Yeah.
It was a softball game.
They would give up about 8-10 runs a game,
yes,
too.
Yes, they would.
Yeah.
But, just see that. And there was another outfielder named Dante Pichette.
I remember Bichette. Yeah, his son is Blue Jay now.
He has 2 sons.
Bo and...
another B.
Well, Bo is the one I think we're talking about.
Right. And
because Biggio's son's on that team, too.
Correct. The Killer Bees.
Yeah. The Blue Jays are going to be really good in a couple years, but we're talking about the Rockies.
But the Bichette used to do a great job in the outfield. But Larry Walker was a great defensive outfielder as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
7-time Gold Glover.
Yeah. So anyway, when you talk about an outfield, the Rockies have just 7 or 8 outstanding outfielders that I think, when you look down the list, you're like, who do I choose? But I'm happy with the ones we chose, and again, Cargo's in there as well, and he was a great outfielder. So yeah.
I think what we have too much of with offense with the Rockies, we immediately lack in pitching. Now, of course, it's a little unfair to say who's the best Rocky pitcher ever, because naturally your ERA is going to go up, and if you have a 4.0 ERA with the Rockies, you're probably a pretty good pitcher.
Yeah, I agree.
So when looking at relievers, closers, as well as starters, none of these people, and I'm not trying to insult them, they're still they're major league talents. None of them would end up on anyone's other 25-man roster, not in the bullpen, not as a closer, not as a starter. So, but because they played in Colorado, I went with the most recognizable name for pitcher history for their starter, Ubaldo Jimenez.
That's interesting. He's been on the popularity list and all that stuff. In Colorado, he did pretty well, considering the elements and everything else.
The no-hitter.
Yeah, and I think once he got out of Colorado and I think ended up with the Orioles, he kind of fell apart. Could have been a whole bunch of control problems and all that stuff. But again, when he was in Colorado, he was a very valuable piece. I had Daryl Kile as
rest in peace.
Yes, as one of the people that again was very consistent. His ERA was like 3.5 to 4, but again, I mean, he was the number 1 starter for them for many years and did a fairly decent job.
Jason Jennings is up there too, if you remember him from the late 90s.
Yeah.
Again, their stats don't pop out by any means. Like you're never going to find a Cy Young winner in Colorado. So you have to kind of really kind of weed through a lot of this stuff. But sure, Kile, Jennings, Jimenez. I mean, all that stuff all those players will be fine pitching. They've had a little bit more success on the back end with, I think, relievers and closers. Their all-time saves leaders, again, in Brian Fuentes, who is my closer for this team. And then I have Huston Street, another great closer for the Rockies, but he's going to be my setup man for the Rockies. So who's your bullpen?
have Fuentes as my setup.
Okay.
Greg Holland as my closer.
Has Holland done 3 years?
Yeah, I think he did.
Okay. I know that Wade Davis was on that cusp. I think Wade Davis only
He's
did 2.
entering his 3rd year. Wade Davis.
Okay, so yeah.
Because he left the Cubs after the championship
So it's like
year.
2. All right, okay, gotcha. So Wade's a great pitcher. I just don't think, one, he's not worth what he's getting paid for.
But had a tough year last year.
Yeah, he did. He got lit up.
Yeah.
So did Kimbrel. So we'll talk about that eventually too. But yeah, so Street, Fuentes, again, pitching does not sound like all-stars. By no means are they, but for the Rockies pitching, this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah. I had a LaTroy Hawkins
in
there as well.
LaTroy.
He
was good.
Yeah.
Lefty.
Righty.
I thought he was lefty.
Right.
I thought it was lefty LaTroy. Okay.
Well. But he came out of Minnesota and everything else, but he used to pitch 70, 80 games a year because the starters got lit up, and he was always in there. And if you look at how many games he pitched per year, he had an amazing arm.
Kind of like an Arthur Rhodes.
Yeah, I mean, he was in there all the time. But, just I think another one that needs to be mentioned just in passing, just about a nice job he did.
Yeah. We close with talking about the best manager in Rockies history, and our favorite logo. We'll bring up the logos here on the screen in a second. Fun little fact about these managers since '93, not a single manager has had a winning percentage or like a positive winning percentage above 500. They might have had a few great years, like Bud Black or Clint Hurdle, but then you have a rough year and your whole average, your winning percentage gets brought under 500. So you're really going to choose a loser, no offense here, whoever you pick as a manager. So who's your loser?
Tough division as well.
Yeah, I know, but
and I think they did used to have good years and bad years and all that. I had Don Baylor.
Okay.
I just liked he was a tough guy, and he managed during their offensive juggernaut.
90s.
Yeah, and he did a great job. He was a great offensive player with the Orioles and Yankees and a few other teams. But I like Don Baylor's his personality, and I think he really got enthusiasm going to Colorado. He was the first manager that came out of the organization. So I just like what he did, and I've always been a fan.
Nice. I went with Clint Hurdle solely because he was the only manager to lead them to a World Series. They didn't win. They got completely shut out by the Red Sox in 2007 World Series. They didn't even win a World Series game, unfortunately. Although I do hope the Rockies eventually do win a World Series, and hopefully it's under or with Nolan Arenado. So I went with Hurdle. Logos, there's only been 2. I know my favorite from the jump out. What's yours?
I like this one right here with the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, you got to show the mountains if you're Colorado, and this CR, not good enough.
That's right.
This is what cuts it.
Probably Coors put in some money for the mountains.
Yeah, it'd be cool if it like changed colors when it got cold in the Rockies, like their beer.
Yeah, that would really be cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, just I think that one really fits that region much more than just the CR and everything else.
Yeah.
So it has a little bit of artistic ability. So yeah, if you're ever in the area, do visit Denver and go to the Rockies game. Great place to visit. Very exciting city.
I think it's very fun that we spent more time talking about a newer team, and we talked a lot about the Nats too, versus like legends like the Cardinals or something like that, where we talked a lot less. So when you have a shorter history, you have almost more contenders to talk about and debate about. So that's why I like doing these more recent teams. They're really fun to discuss. But again, in the description below, feel free to comment, subscribe, give us a like, let us know your thoughts. Maybe you think Story's a better shortstop than Tulowitzki. Come debate with us. We welcome all opinions.
Yeah. Great, and it was always fun to do this. There's so many talented players that we research and everything else. It's a whole bunch of fun to do this, so we appreciate your listening.
Thanks for watching.